Hello, and thank you for joining us for a conversation on the circular economy and the internal corporate ecosystem. My name is Renee Loper. I'm Vice President of Program Innovation at Pyxera Global, and I'm joined by my colleague Ann Mites, who you will see and hear from shortly. Thrilled to have this conversation today with Ann from 3M to speak a little bit about how to navigate internal corporate ecosystems, break down silos, bring everyone from the corporation along the circular economy journey, learn from 3M, what are some things that they have learned along the way from successfully doing this, and then share some insights from Pyxera Global in the work that we do, working with a variety of corporations from around the world on their journey toward a circular economy. So thrilled to have this conversation with Ann today. Before we dive in and before I turn it over to Ann to introduce herself, give a little bit of information about Pyxera Global and who we are. We are an organization based in Washington, D.C., and we exist to leverage the unique strengths of the public, private, and social sectors, educational institutions, and individuals to really break down silos and barriers and solve solvable problems toward sustainable communities to improve lives and livelihoods. The way that that work takes shape and is in a variety of ways, which you'll hear a little bit more about later. But we really exist to solve solvable problems through complex solutions with a variety of players. So thrilled to share a little bit more about that. But before we dive into the details, we'll turn it over to Ann to introduce herself and the work she does at 3M. Ann?
Thanks, Renee. My name is Ann Mites. I'm the Sustainability Director for 3M's Consumer Business Group, and I'm also the Circular Economy Champion for all of 3M. In case you're not familiar with 3M, we're a very science-based company. We've got a little over $30 billion in sales. We're very global in nature, and our portfolio is expansive. We have more than 55,000 different products. We're organized into 4 different business groups, and these business groups really mirror the markets that we serve. So we have a safety and industrial business group where you'll find everything from N95 respirators to tapes and sandpapers. We have a transportation and electronics business where you'll find road signs and optical films that might be used in your favorite cell phone or LCD television. We have a healthcare business that makes medical devices and medical supplies and dental supplies, food safety solutions. And then in the consumer business, where I'm from, you'll find iconic brands like Post-it notes and Scotch-Brite sponges, Scotch tapes, and Command-free, damage-free hanging solutions. So it's nice to be with you today, Renee.
Thank you, Ann. And thank you again for the refresher of all of the work that 3M does. I am always amazed, and I'm sure that many of the folks joining us, 3M is synonymous with Post-it notes. So it's really good to hear and to learn all about the other areas of the business, that 3M contributes solutions. And I'm sure that many of the folks that are with us today are familiar with the N95 masks, thanks to COVID-19. So that also has now become synonymous with 3M. So thank you for sharing that. So this is a great time for us to connect as we talk about sustainability. That has been a hot topic, if you will, for quite some time. I'm starting to see it show up more and more, both in the news and the work that we do and the partners that we work with. And then specific to sustainability, it's this notion of circular economy. But what we do know is while we're hearing about it more often, it's not new. The work of sustainability is not new. And in fact, 3M has been a long-time leader in sustainability. But what I think, folks don't know is how 3M became a leader in sustainability, and probably even more importantly, how it maintains its commitments to sustainability. That's not easy to do. When you think about the notion of sustainability needing to be woven into all aspects of the business. So I would love to hear from you, how does 3M approach sustainability? Give us a little peek behind the curtain. How does it maintain these commitments? And then also, I think it would be helpful for you to talk a little bit about sustainability and circular economy. I know they're often used synonymously. They're not necessarily the same. So if you could talk a little bit about that too, that would be helpful.
Absolutely. Thanks, Renee. You're right. 3M has had a really long-standing commitment to environmental stewardship. We had something called our Pollution Prevention Pays program, which started way back in 1975. And we've had public sustainability goals going back to 1990. Our current set of sustainability goals was launched in 2015. They're known as our 2025 sustainability goals. There's 15 different goals that span a number of areas, including operations, products, customers, and social responsibility. And of course, we report on each of those goals annually in our sustainability report. But maybe what's more exciting, I think, at least from my vantage, is our CEO decided to double down on sustainability at the end of 2018 when he publicly launched our new strategic sustainability framework. So this new framework lays on top of our existing sustainability goals, and it kind of paves the way for bigger and bolder sustainability commitments. So there's 3 different pillars in this new framework. The first pillar is science for circular, as in circular economy. So if you've been watching other webinars on circular economy, maybe you realize that in a circular economy, you're really trying to keep materials in play for a longer time. So in this pillar, we're really trying to design with less material, to do more with less, and really drive that circular economy. So our first new commitment in this space was something called our sustainability value commitment. So our CTO announced this, that starting in 2019, every single new product that enters our new product commercialization system is required to have, be able to demonstrate a sustainability value commitment showing how that product drives impact for the greater good. So circularity attributes, if you think about this, are one way that we can fulfill the sustainability value commitment. So as our R&D teams are working on designing products, maybe they could use recycled or renewable materials. Maybe they could work to make the product more durable, which would reduce waste. Maybe they reduce waste, making our manufacturing operations more circular. We're also asking those R&D teams to pay more attention to, hey, what happens to the product at the end of life? You know, can you make it recyclable or designed for recyclability? Can you, as a marketer, think of a new business model where you're, designing for sharing economy, something like that. Our second pillar is science for climate. In this pillar, it's all about, innovating to decarbonize industry. We're looking at novel systems that are going to really help lower or improve our environmental footprint. So our first new commitment in this space was to get to 100% renewable electricity with an interim milestone of 50% by 2025. We're right now between 30 to 35%. So we've got wind power powering our headquarters in Minnesota. We've got on-site solar at a number of plants, and we have several large wind power purchase agreements. Our last pillar is science for community, and in this pillar we're really looking at how we can inspire people with science and inspire people to really kind of join us along that journey. So within this pillar you find a lot of our STEM support activities. You'll find community outreach-based activities in here. So our newest commitment in this space is to get 300,000 skills-based volunteer hours aimed at really solving some of society's biggest challenges. So that was an exciting new recent commitment. So hopefully, Renee, that gives you a little snapshot about sustainability at 3M. I'm curious though, Pyxera is a really different kind of organization than 3M. So I'm curious to understand, how you guys look at sustainability and why in the world did you start up something related to circular economy?
That is a really good question. And before I dive into that, thank you for sharing a little bit about 3M's three pillars. Really insightful. Love the community aspect, of course, and you'll see why in a moment. That's what we exist to do. And it's really bringing in the community into the fold for the things that end up affecting the community. So that actually is why we got into the circular economy space, if you will. You know, if you think about why we exist to do what we do, it really is, as I said kind of in my introduction, it's to improve lives and livelihoods. It's to bring together the three sectors, so public, private, social, to help solve complex problems. Problems that are, you know, world problems, global problems that affect us all, were not created in a vacuum, nor can they be solved in a vacuum. And so we look at circular economy to be no different. It's a linear economy is, you know, the implications of a linear economy affect us all, and unfortunately affect those, as you mentioned, downstream in the community in some disproportionate ways. So we realize that us being a convener of sorts, us being able to navigate, you know, conversations and spaces with governments, with, you know, Fortune 500 companies, multinationals around the world, and then be able to turn around and have conversations with community leaders and community organizations. We were able to bridge those divides and build those relationships toward community improvement, toward sustainable lives and livelihoods. So that's really why we got into, you know, the work of circular economy. It's a solvable problem. You know, we're not experts, if you will, in the circular economy, but keeping true to our mission and to our work of partnerships, we partner with the experts. You know, so we work with folks like Ellen MacArthur organization. We work with, you know, the Ellen MacArthur CE 100, which is a group of 100 companies from around the world that are committed toward building a more circular economy. We partner with folks like Ocean Plastics Leadership Network and Closed Loop Partners. So we bring in the content experts and then help to navigate, again, those spaces with corporations and community organizations toward a more solvable, circular economy. I think one of the things that is really near and dear to our heart, as I mentioned, is the community piece of it. And it's really bringing in, you know, the folks on the ground, if you will, who are often not part of the conversations around things that end up affecting them the most. So that really is why we got, you know, into this work. And we're excited, you know, to continue to move it forward. I think the other thing I would add there is one of the things that, you know, is synonymous with sustainability and even circular economy is recycling. And that's not, you know, that's not all that circular economy it is, and that's not all that, you know, sustainability is. So I think for us, it's acknowledging that it's not a one, you know, kind of a one dot task there, but it really is about connecting all of the dots and bringing in all of the aspects of what a circular economy is into the fold. And for us, it shows up really in zero waste communities. So bringing, again, the community members up to acknowledge that the goal is for there to be zero waste, if you will, you know, in that work. So with that in mind, question for you, thinking about how the concept of circular economy has reached new levels of popularity. And again, we know that it's new. Leadership, what we have found, you know, working at Pyxera Global and navigating, again, different terrains and different sectors, is that the work happens in a vacuum. The work happens in silos. So leadership of sustainability organizations or the waste management teams of even the public sector are tasked with kind of leading the charge on a more circular economy. 3M, again, is an anomaly, if you will, in kind of integrating this work into all aspects of the business. So, and I'm sure that wasn't an easy thing to accomplish. So what lessons have you learned? Has your team learned? What stumbling blocks would you say would be important for folks who are on the journey to look out for? Anything that you could share that would be kind of a little insight into how to make this work, that would be good.
Thanks, Renee. Yeah, I think anything worth doing, there's always, challenges and some stumbling blocks moving forward. I think the first thing that comes to my mind when we started our circular economy work, there was a huge education gap, I think, inside the company. You'd use the word circular economy and people kind of maybe glaze over a little bit. They didn't know what the word meant. I think a fair number of people thought the sustainability team maybe made the word up and they'd be Googling on their phone to say, oh, is this really a thing? And then people became more educated and started seeing that other companies were doing stuff in the space, and we would also, as a sustainability team, be providing examples. I think a second challenge in this area is when you get maybe a new product development team and they're really all in on sustainability or circular, and they're trying to do something to a product and maybe it's going to add cost and they haven't thought about customer value on this. And how do you get around something like that? And my guidance to teams is always to try to get them to focus on solving that customer problem and then solving it in a sustainable manner. And then the value proposition of the product, will take care of it itself. One example I can think of, we make Scotch mounting squares. It's kind of a mounting device when you want to hang something more permanently on the wall. So it's important for these teams, they're always monitoring paint chemistries. So paint chemistries have actually evolved over time. Paint companies are doing a great job trying to remove VOCs, so volatile organic compounds, so there's less smell, odor, less health issues, when you're breathing in that paint. But when they change that paint chemistry, that can change the adhesion of our product. So I think our team at one point said, okay, we need to, beef up the adhesion, to kind of accommodate for these changes in paint chemistry. And they said, hey, when I do this, I can remove the solvents, or I can use a solvent-free adhesive as part of the solution. And hey, look, I had this PVC in my packaging, which isn't recyclable, and it contaminates the recycling system. I can make my packaging recyclable. So kind of building that in, they're trying to solve that customer problem of, making the product stick better, to the modern paint chemistries, but they've incorporated, sustainability along the way. I think the last maybe stumbling block or hurdle that comes to my mind around circular is when teams go to try to add recycled content to things. Sometimes from an R&D vantage, it's maybe not seen as the, sexiest thing on the planet to be working on. So how do you get around that? And I think my counsel to teams in that kind of space is to really focus on market verticals where there's pull or where there's some kind of an economic benefit. So an example there, we make Thinsulate insulation. So this is something used in like a jacket to keep your ski jacket warm or gloves, things like that. In the fashion industry, because of a lot of challenges with fast fashion, there's a lot more focus on sustainability, and there's actually a lot of pull for recycled content. So making that product out of recycled content in that market vertical, then there's customer pull, which always makes the sale easier. So I think those are, 3 examples of maybe roadblocks, but I'm a little curious, we're a Fortune 100 company, so the roadblocks we say may be different than, what a community, sees from a circular economy or sustainability vantage. So what do you see from a community vantage? What are the stumbling blocks those groups have when it comes to sustainability or circular economy?
Good question. And funny enough, when you started with the education piece, that is actually a common stumbling block. When we work in communities, whether it be with nonprofit organizations, social enterprises, or even local government agencies, if you will, it's the concept of circular economy is a bit foreign. The term, the nomenclature is not common, but the notion of it are more known. So the notions even of sustainability, so as I mentioned earlier, recycling, not new, water conservation, not new, that kind of thing. But when you talk about moving from a linear economy, so the make, take, discard type, to either recycling or repurposing or bringing it back into the cycle, that is a little bit new. So there's the education piece of what is it? Is this something a company just made up to be the new kind of campaign of the day? I have heard. And then after we kind of get through the what it is piece, some of the stumbling blocks are the so what. What does this mean for me and my community when we are trying to, secure housing and get access to healthy foods and ensure that our children have a place to go to school? So there's a disconnect with the relevance of it from an environmental standpoint. And so again, it goes back to the education, is we're having to, sit side by side with community organizations and leaders in the community to do more of the education piece to help them understand why this matters. But then on the flip side, it's feeding that information back into the companies that we work with to say, these are the real pains in the community. So when you make these decisions over here, design these products in this way, expect for them to be discarded or reused in this way, these are the actual implications on the ground. So how can we navigate these, and how can we bring all of the stakeholders to the table from the beginning to ensure that these risks, challenges, stumbling blocks are mitigated? So that's, a lot of the work that we do. But it comes again back down to, and we see this in most of the programs that we do, when regardless of the social issue, so not just circular, not just sustainability, but when we work in the communities, it's the community voices are often not at the table from the beginning, so it's again this notion of things being done to them, and being handed down from on high, decisions that are being made that affect them, yet they don't have a voice in, their participation, if you will, in any of it. So those are probably some of the biggest, one person could say stumbling blocks. We like to say opportunities, because on the side, it's the opportunity to, again, create healthy dialogue, empower communities, and then have that reverse education to the corporations and to the government on what actually works in this community. You actually do need this information. So you actually do need to hear from the community members there. So again, opportunity. The other thing that I would say where it's an opportunity, it's even in innovation. So, you had mentioned one of the 3M's pillars touches on innovation and education. So when you talk about STEM education and integrating into the schools, and then even in a entrepreneurship context, is creating new businesses, based on circular with community members. So we look for new and unique opportunities to do different things within the community, and then kind of bring that to our corporate partners, as again, another way to engage and sustain. So good question, though. Very good question. So kind of leads me to another question with you when you talk about new, different, non-traditional, working together in new and unique ways. 3M, I feel like being redundant here, talking about how, the notion of circular economy is baked into what 3M does, as evidenced by the pillars, the value commitments, that kind of thing. So when it comes down to employees who, might not be so close to the work of R&D or creating, or, most connected to creating the products, that kind of thing, how do you, what are some of the successes or lessons learned? What are some of the non-traditional ways even in which you have seen 3M successfully integrate voices from employees, voices from other areas of the business into the work that you all are doing in the sustainability and circular economy space?
That's a great question, Renee. I think one novel way I think that we've worked to integrate sustainability in kind of a non-traditional manner is something called our 3M Impact Program, which you know well. It's something we've partnered with Pixera on. But our 3M Impact Program, so employees can apply to participate in this. It's a skills-based volunteer program. Employees go through, the ones that are selected, extensive training, and then they get to go to another country for a couple of weeks where they're partnered with a cross-functional team, maybe an NGO, you know, startup companies, government agencies, to really focus on what we're calling a priority challenge. And these priority challenges all line up to one of our sustainability pillars. So either science for circular, science for climate, or science for community. So I think by taking those employees, you know, out, it can be employees from any function or any country. So you've got people from all around the world that might be on a team together. When they get to be immersed on a project like that, there's really deep learning, I think, on sustainability, you know, circular economy, climate, all of these issues, and really how they intersect with the community. And I think when those people come back to their, you know, their day job, if you will, they're really, I think, you know, passionate advocates for sustainability. Then I think it's a transformational experience for a lot of people, and it's maybe a way to touch people in kind of a non-traditional way, which makes me wonder, you know, you've worked with 3M, of course, on, you know, the 3M Impact Project and other projects like our Catalyst Development Program. So you've had a chance to work with us and with other, you know, Fortune 500 companies. I'm curious, you know, what observations you've made then, you know, working with these people on sustainability, you know, what kind of trends, observations, you know, challenges, navigating through corporate systems that you've had to navigate in this role?
Good question. I think one of the biggest trends that I have seen has been, and I think that it's precipitous of even the topic of our conversation, and it's the silos. And I kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier, but we have seen that oftentimes the work of, you know, sustainability and circular economy sits with the sustainability team, and that's it. So it's an add-on, you know, it's something that the company is saying, you know, we do all this work and then we're sustainable over here. And then so when you talk to employees, or when you talk to someone in the foundation, or, you know, from the corporate social responsibility team, you know, or even in supply chain, you know, if you will, when you talk to anyone else in the company, it's like, oh yeah, I read that on the intranet. You know, what is, I saw it in our report. What is this? So there's a disconnect in folks really understanding what the commitments of the corporation mean to them and to their work. So with that in mind, because of the rise of ESG metrics and, you know, the accountability of corporations, you know, to show value not only to shareholders but to stakeholders as well, there's more of a spotlight on what are you doing in the areas of sustainability. So now departments within companies are being held accountable, but they're not quite sure for what or how to even meet those accountabilities. You know, for instance, a lot of our counterparts at some of the companies we work with, for their skills-based work in particular, as you mentioned, 3M, it's Catalyst and Impact, a lot of the folks that we work with traditionally were sitting in the CSR function, so the corporate social responsibility function. Suddenly, their title has changed to Director of Sustainability, or they are now rolled into the sustainability team. And as quiet as it's kept, a lot of them are wondering, what does this mean? You know, they get it from a social impact standpoint, you know, in the work that doing good in communities and, you know, having positive impact on the environment, that kind of thing, but not quite sure what it means in terms of ESG metrics and how this then folds back up into investors. You know, why are we being accountable for this way? You know, what does this mean for volunteering? So there is a lot of education and re-education and even unlearning, you know, that we're seeing within corporations from that aspect. So I think that's the silos, and then just the learning and unlearning that I'm seeing a tremendous amount of. But again, I think it's all opportunity. It all leads to great opportunities to do new and innovative things, and especially in these new and unique times that we're in. I think innovation definitely is at the cusp of what change can look like for us. So kind of with that in mind, as you know, partnership is at the core of what Pyxera Global does. We, again, exist to unite the three sectors, work together with organizations and individuals across the three sectors. One of the things that we know to be true from our work in partnerships is that it can't be forced. It's great to partner when it makes sense, but it doesn't always make sense. But in the area of sustainability and circular economy, we know that it's a big, hairy, complex thing. So you have to partner. You have to partner with folks internally. You have to partner with folks externally. What are some of the ways that 3M has approached this notion of partnership, in the circular economy space?
That's a great question, Renee. I think collaboration and partnerships are really critical to succeeding in circular economy. I think I'll use something like packaging as an example for this. I think it's something everybody can relate to. I think when you start and you're trying to make your packaging more circular, inside your company, you run and it's like, okay, I'm going to make my packaging more recyclable. I'm going to add recycled content. And then I think at some point you have a realization that, that's not enough. Just doing that alone isn't far enough. And I say that because, you think of something like a plastic water bottle. It's perfectly recyclable, but today, only 30% of them end up actually in the recycling bin. So just making it recyclable, isn't enough. So one area of collaboration, that we did, when we were thinking what else could we do, several years ago we joined something called the How to Recycle program. This is a program run by the Sustainable Packaging Coalition where they put standardized labels on products to help instruct consumers on recyclability. So a lot of big retailers like the Walmarts, Targets, Amazons all belong to the program. Today, over 200 consumer packaged good companies and other companies have joined on. So everybody collaborating to put the exact same icons on there, to help educate consumers on packaging recyclability so people know, hey, I can put this in my blue bin or this needs to go in the trash. But okay, you get to a point, you've made your stuff recyclable and you label it all, but still the recycling infrastructure in a lot of places is weak. So, we've gone and we've partnered with the Recycling Partnership and Closed Loop Fund. You mentioned both of those groups earlier. So we're doing projects with them in Minnesota to improve recycling at multifamily housing projects. We're helping fund projects with Closed Loop Fund where they're looking at advanced recycling to tackle some of the challenges with plastic waste. And then Ellen MacArthur Foundation, I think, is another one I'd like to kind of throw into the mix. It's a great, kind of pre-competitive space for companies, NGOs, people who are interested in kind of collaborating, working together to solve these, big, complicated problems. So, you guys in Pyxera, you get to work with so many different companies. What kinds of innovative forms of collaboration, have you seen with all the people that you work with?
We've seen a lot. We've seen a lot. Some successful, some less than successful. I think that's the beauty in the seat that we sit in, is that we've been privy to see a lot of new and unique things. In our partnership with companies like SAP, where they leverage technology to work with, Bumblebee Tuna and organizations, even nonprofits on the ground to tie in technology to track packaging. So when you talk about, blockchain and that kind of thing, like that's mind blowing, for us to be part of those partnerships. But one, you mentioned infrastructure in your last response. You mentioned infrastructure, and you mentioned how, in some of the partnerships that you're a part of, it's the packaging labels to educate consumers to know what can be recycled. The first thing that came to my mind was, yeah, but not every, municipality has the infrastructure to process certain, materials and goods. And it actually made me think about a partnership that we had with 3M in India, in Mumbai, where we worked with the waste pickers. So, the informal sector, if you will, which is a huge sector. So there's a lot of waste pickers who, go around in the streets and pick up all of the discarded materials, take them to a variety of different collections points, if you will, and sort things out and then disperse them to the facilities that can actually handle those materials. Well, as Mumbai, one of the most populous cities in the world, looked at becoming a more circular city, that would mean that the waste pickers would be displaced, and for a lot of the waste pickers, this is their primary source of income. So when you talk about displacing, for some look like, for lack of a better word, homeless or folks that are often discounted, this is a huge part of the economy, a huge part of the community, a huge part of the population. So together with 3M, we actually went in and worked with a couple of different organizations to design or reimagine what a waste management infrastructure could look like to include the waste pickers into this toward a more circular economy. So when I think about innovation and partnership and creativity, that's the kind of things that really gets me inspired and excited, is because it's working with folks who are often discounted, in the community, with a Fortune 100 company who, has his fingers in a lot of different buckets around the world, bring them together. And it's like, at the end of the day, we still can have an impact on a life, a city, a sector, and an entire economy. That to me is what it's about. So I get excited about looking for more ways to do that, those kind of innovations and that kind of thing. So, and I know you and I, we can talk for hours going, but we should probably think about winding this down. So I do want to end on a note with you, thankful to our friends at the Association for Supply Chain Management for having us, and allowing us to have this conversation. So really want to tie it back into, the members that might be with us, viewing this session now. So when we think about stakeholders, internal stakeholders, within a corporation, we know, that our supply chain friends are critical toward a circular economy journey within a corporation. So can you talk a little bit about what are the successful shifts that you have seen, within 3M as it relates specifically to supply chain professionals? And even what's the mindset shifts that you have witnessed, as 3M has progressed along this journey?
I think when you say mindset, the first thing that pops into my head really is trying to help people on their journey kind of switch from that linear mindset of, oh, I'm just going to order raw materials, I'm going to make product, we're going to ship it to the customer, and then I'm done with it, into, kind of this more, circular mode of, okay, maybe the byproduct from my manufacturing plant can be used at another 3M plant as a raw material, or maybe by some party, and there's a lot of extra maybe logistics in there that weren't in there before. Or maybe we're going to change the materials that we're buying. So some of our supplier partnerships or the materials we're buying, maybe we want more recycled or renewable materials on there. We're also encouraging teams to think about, end of life for products. So, maybe there's opportunities for take-back programs of the product itself, or some form of waste that the product generates. And all of those things require reverse logistics, which is where really the supply chain, professionals can come into play. So I think I encourage everybody, no matter what function you're in, if you're in supply chain versus marketing, manufacturing, product development, to really, sit down and think, like, what can I do on a personal level, to help drive that circular economy? What can I do to educate myself, so I'm familiar with all the words and how I might contribute?
So what can I do and how can I educate? So there really is a role, there's space for everyone and there's a role for everyone to play.
There definitely is.
Thank you for that. Like I said, I know you and I could go on for hours. We should probably end it here. So thank you for your time. And again, I appreciate having this conversation with you and kind of getting a little peek behind the curtain within 3M to understand, what were some of the lessons that you all have learned, what are some of the successes you have had, and what some of the advices that you have as other corporations seek to make their way toward a more circular economy and figure out how to navigate internal ecosystems. So thank you again for your time.
Thanks, Renee. I enjoyed the opportunity to participate. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.